it's your boy Young I give him that time. Pancho leg stand and punchy America. Banyi doll, pancho leg stand and punchy America. Banyi doll, ban walk on your leg, kankaro what I know watching. Oga level leg, gear bow, very leg. Panda with ya, punchy America. Panya doll, no, chingatonga pandon could you ever buy a check out. Paku panda gear, what ya be doll venting. Stand and punchy America, Banyi doll, Panta leg stand and punchy America, Banyi doll, Ban walk on your leg, Kankaro what I know watching, Oga level leg, gear bow, where I leg, Panda with ya, punchy America, Panya doll, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Paku Panda gear, what ya be, doll venting.
Thank you so much, our viewers and the technical team, Leg State Media. Welcome to Leg State Media Beyond Boundaries on this date, 6th of December, 2022. We are here today to have conversation, excuse me, with our usual guest, one of the leading activists in our country, Mr. Edmund Yakani, and I'm aware many of you are familiar with his work and his dedication once it comes to the affairs of our country. And our today conversation will focus much on three aspects. And the first issue is the war going on in Upper Nile region for the last 3 months, and it has really intensified itself to the extent reports are telling us over 3,000 lives were lost, and those were civilians. And you know very well, sometimes reports are not always accurate. Mr. Edmund will talk to many South Sudanese and will also give us his perspective and his suggestions on what should be the modality the government of South Sudan should use, especially the central government, to approach this warring faction of Kitugwang and the one of Johnson Oloñ. On that note, he will also comment on sending troops to eastern part of Democratic Republic of Congo by the East Africa Community leadership, South Sudan included. And we will wrap it up later on with the SPLM, which is the ruling party, the structure of new leadership, which happened last week. And it is now a talk on social media and on other platforms by many South Sudanese. Mr. Edmund Yakani, thank you so much for always finding time to come and talk to South Sudanese and sharing your opinions. That is a great thing to do. No matter what people are not paying attention to, then keep beating that drum until people will give you their ears to listen to what the song that you are singing. Thank you so much. Welcome and give us your opening remark.
Thank you very much, and also thanks for Lex Media for hosting me for this particular subject, specifically the situation in Upper Nile, which is really disturbing, which I describe it as a situation of crime against humanity going on. So And I think also I'd like to say thanks to the listeners and viewers of Lex Media and those who might have been following us in different platforms. So I'm here as South Sudanese, as an activist, to take the advantage of this space and to share concerns about what's happening to our people in Chollo Kingdom, and specifically between the ethnic group, the Chollo, and our brothers from the Nuer. What's going on is really disturbing, something that is below humanity and below the interest of why we struggle to have independent state of South Sudan from the rest of Sudan. But otherwise, based on our conversation, I will express my opinion around what I know and the numbers and the statistics, and maybe best solutions or best approaches for finding a sustainable solution to the situation in Chollo Kingdom or in some parts of Upper Nile State, because not only Chollo Kingdom have extended, also now we have seen these particular clashes happening in Taka. So I think these are subjects that I can raise it up and I can express my opinion with the audience, and hope that I'll also get questions from the audience. The only thing I would like to make a disclaimer is that let's abstain ourselves from hate speech and hostile propaganda. That normally when such violence happen among our communities, the level of hate speech and hostile propaganda increase. And I've seen already a high increase in hate speech and hostile propaganda based on the situation that is happening in Upper Nile. But also we need to take responsibility by demanding our leaders to act responsibly. Otherwise, it means the country is really bleeding in the parts of Upper Nile, and while some part of the countries are enjoying the dividends, little dividends of what they can call it as a relatively peace and stability in the country. So I think that's will be my opening remarks. So let's go ahead. Based on our conversation, I will express my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Etimon Yakani, for that. Actually, it's true indeed. Sometimes the word that we use and the choices of the word that we choose once we are addressing some issues of concern matters a lot, especially at this current situation we are in. Mr. Edmund, many South Sudanese, especially those who are in diaspora, and some of them who are in other peaceful part of the country, and even those who sacrificed their lives during the struggle, 2-point-something million lives which were lost, are questioning themselves what went wrong after we gain independence as a nation. What really went wrong for our government and for our generals of government to use their own power against their own people? People were not expecting the level in which the war in Upper Nile region or the Upper Nile state has reached. It was not expectation of many South Sudanese. After peace in Addis Ababa, and the revitalized peace agreement, people were having hope that that will be the end of rebellion in South Sudan. And unfortunately, it gave birth to many rebellion. And recently, when government of South Sudan approached just the two, Johnson Oleng and Simon Gadwich Dual, citizens also were having that hope that maybe this will be the end of Upper Nile region rebellion, because Upper Nile region has been turned as the hub for rebellion, for the people to rebel, and the victims always are citizens. They went to sign Khartoum Declaration, and citizens were happy with that. But what went wrong at the recent past? We would be happy if you have inside information to highlight us and the citizens of what went wrong. There were two brothers against Juba regime. After Juba regime approaches the two brothers and brought them on the table, to the extent some of their delegation were accommodated at the most expensive hotel in Juba. And that is where their problem started. They start turning each other to fight. The fight did not end between the army and the army. It has also moved in the length of tribes. Up to now, it has reached to the level of Nuer versus Chuluk, which is very unfortunate. And you have read the reports. telling us over 3,000 civilians' lives were lost for the last few weeks in that fight. Kindly, Edmund, you are always every day getting information across the country. Can you tell us what went wrong and what is the best solution or the approach being developed or mechanism by Juba regime to address such situation in Upper Nile? Mr. Edmond, I yield it back to you and give us your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother, for hosting me in this particular subject, which is really a disturbing subject, a subject that we describe our communities in Upper Nile are bleeding for the last 17 years. You remember, since the CPA was signed in 2005, we started experiencing clashes in Upper Nile when there's a competition over entry to stadium when Bashir was still president of Sudan. Right from that time, Upper Nile is not in peace and stability. So some parts of Upper Nile are bleeding for the last 17 years. An unfortunate situation that, as we speak per now, as I said, Upper Nile become a hub of violence. But I would like to set some facts here, very straightforward, before I could go to in-depth of the questions you have raised. One of the reasons why Upper Nile is up to now bleeding since the signing of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2005 until today is simply, this is the consequences of the impact of Bashir regime, or what they call the NCP strategies, because NCP have infiltrated communities in Upper Nile in building warlords, what I describe as a gun class. So these are remnants of the gun class. Remember, a lot of militias that were enrolled by Sudan by then used to fight the SPL are really from that region of Upper Nile. And still, that behaviors, those attitudes are still in the mindset of some few, and they are still continue disturbing Upper Nile. You remember names, you can name them. Some of them have already died. And if they would have been alive, I could see, I'm quite sure the situation would have been more worse than what we're seeing now. So that's one thing that we need to put it very clear in terms of context why Upper Nile up to now is suffering, because there are so many warlords that were manufactured by NCP in the region of Upper Nile, and still the consequences, because they become a gun class that is notorious and they believe on themselves. That's one thing. The second thing that also affecting Upper Nile is that some of the fighters during the struggle for the independence of South Sudan have personal grievances, that they have turned this personal grievance of theirs by subjecting their communities to suffer, mobilizing these ignorant youth who have no alternative livelihood as a fighting force. If you see videos coming from the ground of mobilization, as if the lives of this particular youth who are mobilized in ethnic line in terms of what's on mitigating personal grievances are not human beings. So you still are in the old ancient stage where you can mobilize population to fight with arrows, but now we're using AK-47. They're dying in big numbers. That's the second one. The third thing I want to say is that statistics that are coming out are not accurate. The numbers are more than the statistics that are coming out. I have to be honest with you. There are bodies in the waters. And remember, with the floods in that particular region of Upper Nile, around the land of what, if you can describe, Chollo Kingdom, and then why the fighting is happening, there's a floods there. People are stuck in the middle of the waters, and they're dying in the middle of the waters. You see bodies in the middle of the water. So the counting of the numbers may not be accurate. My feeling is that the numbers are bigger than what we have seen. These are the numbers that are officially counted by official entities, but they're numbers of dead bodies in the bushes where nobody can access those areas for counting. So the numbers are more than 3,000, to be honest. The other thing I'd like to say is that the description of the situation, we can say it's a gross human rights violation situation that's going on now, because the fighting is becoming no longer respecting the principle of engagement in terms of warfare. So it's just like it's a completely massacre that you can describe it by characteristics of being as a genocide or by the characteristic of being a crime against humanity. But of course, you need an independent investigation to level its genocide or crime against humanity. But the elements that describe genocides, the element that describe crime against humanity is happening on the ground, in where even starvation is being used as a weapon of war, where people are pushed into the middle of the water. If you see from Kodak, all those areas, Kaka, those areas, if you look at those areas of Fashoda, people are stuck in the middle of the water where there's no any humanitarian aid. Some of them are dying of hunger. So also starvation is becoming a weapon of war among the fighting forces in Upper Nile. So these are some of the facts that I would like to set very clear. The other facts are very clear is that what is going on between Simon Gatwich and Olong is a complete sponsored proxy war, because they have supply. It's a proxy war. That I like to say, it means there are people who are benefiting from this proxy war in sponsoring them. I know in terms of Olong, he's stuck with his forces are in the steamers. The Simon Gatwich force cannot access them. The White Army, they're fighting there. But also you can realize that it has gone beyond the scale of Simon Gatwich versus Olong. You have seen what happened in Tonja 2 days ago. Simon Gatwich and I also clashed there, and it means more further displacement. So it become an area of everybody. Actually, it is somehow a small Somalia in South Sudan. I can describe that actually. What is going on now in Upper Nile is what we are seeing in Mogadishu. But simply because there's no media reporting, that's why it can't sound like it is Somalia in South Sudan. So that part of South Sudan in Upper Nile, those parts of Upper Nile where the class is going, it's a real Somalia case that we could have had the stories like what is happening in Somalia, where you can see civilians. The only thing is that there's no bombing, but there's a really strategic and targeted attacks on ethnic communities, on ethnic line. That's happening in the region of Upper Nile. So for me, that's a clear indicator that there's a proxy war, because if it wasn't proxy war, where are they getting the supplies? Even rumors are coming that reinforcement are coming with choppers. The choppers that are coming for reinforcement. So who are those people who are sponsoring the enforcement of forces on the ground? So there's a proxy war. And I think there's maybe some fingers even within Juba that are behind this proxy war from all the people who are elites within Juba town. So for me, it's a real call that what's happening in Upper Nile is something that we shouldn't be silent about it. It's not a case of Nuer and Chollo fighting. It's a national issue. It's a national issue where massive population of Nuer, massive population of Shuluk are suffering because of few elites disputes that we could have used dialogue as the best way of resolving them. So that's what I'd like to say. So I'd like to say the situation right now, right from the whole Shuluk Kingdom land is facing violence. And you have seen what happened in Fashoda. So you have seen what has happened in some of the villages that are around Fashoda, that all the people are stuck in the middle of the water. So what I'd like to say is that it's a serious armed violence that is a wage of war against ethnic lines. It depends on how the war started. Right now, all the scenarios are going the wage is waged by the White Army against the Chollo Kingdom. So we're losing huge population of the Chollo. But that does not mean that also the Nuer are not dying, the White Army who are on attack. They're also dying. And this may be revenge. If you remember the early days of the 3 months that you have said, when the Agwelek were attacking also the side of Simon Gatwich, also the Agwelek have committed a lot of massive killing of Nuer civilians. So both parties are not clean. There's no part of them we can say is clean. Both parties are guilty. Both parties are engaged in committing atrocities. But unfortunate thing is that civilians and population of civil population that belong to the both leaders' ethnic identity are the one paying the price. They're not paying the price, the warlords. They're not completely. This gun class are not paying the price, but the population of their ethnic identity is paying the price. Right now, Shuluk are paying the price because of Agwelek identity, which is not all Shuluk are Agwelek, and all Shuluk believe on what Olong is pursuing. Some of them are completely innocent, but they are murdered because of that. So for me, that is the context that now the story of Upper Nile is in. What went wrong? What went wrong is that only Olong and Simon Gatwich are not fighting objective war. They're fighting war of their personal interest. They're fighting war of personal interest. Even if I don't discuss land issues, we have huge land disputes in other parts of South Sudan. Why is it not claiming lives of civilians in the same manner? Why are those communities arming themselves? There's huge land disputes across the country. That is going on right now. Land grabbing, everything. Why some people who their land have been grabbed, not mobilize themselves to arm themselves to the level that we witness armed violence, like what's going on between the Chollo and the Nuer in Fashoda area. So for me, it's a complete proxy war that is waged for ethnic cleansing. And I think some people one day will be held accountable on sponsoring ethnic cleansing and proxy war between Simon Gatwich and Olong. So for me, that's a situation that is really completely disturbing, is inhuman, is something that anybody who is sound in mind will not keep quiet. We need to call for an immediate cessation of hostility between the forces of Simon Gatwich and Johnson Olong, and in particular, Simon Gatwich need to really cease fire against the force of Olong, because he is on attack and Olong is on protective position with his forces. And now we are seeing huge population of civilians are paying that price. And as I said, let us not say that Nuer are not been dying. They're also dying. The White Army are dying really in those classes. So this is something that we do, and specifically the latest in Taka, when they clash in Tonja, when they clash between the IO and and Gatwich forces, which is 2 days ago. We have lost both sides. Who are we losing? We're losing the same ethnic groups from both sides as are fighting. And what is it? It's just personal grievances between generals and commanders. So we have a very bad gun class in the country, that gun class that believe on committing atrocities against civilians, and they believe that's the best way they're struggling or they're paving their way to power. So you can't pave your way to power by committing such atrocities against civilian population, which already official reports 3,000, but my access to information is more than 3,000. We have lost huge number of Chollo population, and then even we also have lost, though they're not counted, we have lost them. So for me, it's really a big issue. But right now, Chollo are really under attack by the White Army of the Gatwich, which is under Simon Gatwich. So for me, it's a responsibility of Olony and Simon Gatwich to really sit down. But at the same time, we can't say also Juba is clean. There are people in Juba who are sponsoring that. So Juba need to take responsibility. So my appeal goes as follows. My immediate recommendation is that if we want to find a solution to this particular situation that is going on now in some parts of Upper Nile around the Chollo land, one, the presidency need to make a decision. What is the decision that the presidency need to make? Decision that it is easy if you have a functional government that believe that its constitutional primary responsibility is to save the lives of its own citizens. The Juba government can intervene into that situation, either intervene through dialogue, like what they did with the Khartoum Peace Agreement, where they have used Sudan to sponsor a process of getting these people together, or they find another model way of how to get forcefully and discipline the two commanders as long they are targeting civilians. Because lifting the Zulu king from his hometown to Juba by itself is subjecting the civilian population for very huge atrocities, because the king is no longer there. Everybody can do anything and nobody have attention. And remember, that's an area where there's no media coverage. So no reporting, no reports are coming accurately. It's only now people who are volunteering on citizen journalism that are providing information on the ground, because there's no accurate. So facts are not coming as accurate as what is happening on the ground. They're either manipulated or they're below what is happening on the ground in terms of magnitude. The magnitude may be completely underrated while actual things are happening in massive population. So I think Juba have that. And if completely that's for the next 2 or 3 days, if there's no cessation of hostility, if there's no response from Juba, I've seen already international community making a calls about the disturb about what's going on in the region of Upper Nile among the forces of Simon Gatwich and Johnson Olony. And we have seen already the leadership of UNHCR in South Sudan have raised a concern that they are worried that refugees may be trapped in this violence. And remember, you have this side of the Shuluk land, there's fighting going on. Then also Maban they have just seized for the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Also in Maban, there's a crisis going on there. So all these attributed to a violence against civilian population, that region of Upper Nile. So for me, it become a complete issue that we need to take responsibility to ensure that people intervene. If the central government failed to intervene in this particular issue, then international community can come in. And my appeal that goes to international community in particular is going to the Human Rights Council in Geneva. The Human Rights Council in Geneva can use the office of the South Sudan Human Rights Commission, which is established by UN, or they can use the office of the UN Special Envoy on the Prevention of Genocide, which is based in New York, to wage a bit of to send a fact-finding mission to the country, to the ground, to find out exactly what's going on in the region of Upper Nile. So for me, those are the things that we need to see them as an immediate solution. Thank you very much. Over there to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brother Yakani, for explaining and giving us a brief background of the genesis of this war between Simon Gatwich and Johnson Olony. But the question remains, Mr. Edmond, as you mentioned earlier, that these guys are fighting war which has no objectives. And if it has, then the objectives are not clear. That's very true. It takes me to the statement of someone who said earlier that the dangerous rebels is a semi-literate one. They're easy to be manipulated, and sometimes they wage war without objectives. And exactly that's what is happening between Simon Gatwich and Johnson Olony. You cannot be brothers yesterday trying to pursue one goal, and within nowhere, not even close to what you claim to be fighting for, you start dividing yourself and you start fighting among yourself. You said it's a proxy war, which is sometimes clear and many citizens may agree with you. It happened and Juba is silent. Why? Is it because they have fun? Or is it because two of them, the first vice president and the president of the republic, the two enemies now were at some point their colleague and were at some point their enemies? Is it because their previous enemies are fighting themselves? That's why they're silent? Or is it because they want to also achieve their objectives underwater by funding Johnson Olunch and telling him to crush Simon Gadwich? And on the other hand, you supported Simon Gadwich and tell Simon Gadwich you can finish and crush Johnson Olunch. If that is the case, are they not even seeing the citizens that are dying in Upper Nile, and most especially the Chuluk? Recently, they were having governors' forums, and we did not hear any information or any statement from the president, from the first vice president, or even from the parliament. The National Assembly is quiet about that. The Upper House, which is Council of Ministers, Council of State, rather, is quiet about it. Can you tell us exactly, Edmund, is Juba regime or Juba government happy with what is happening in Upper Nile? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Based on the questions, let me start with the last part of your question. You know, silence means demonstrating no responsibility of taking action. So the silence that is happening in Juba, it tells you very clear that people doesn't want to take responsibility of acting, of mitigating, or finding a solution to that. That's for me, God. And that's why I level as a proxy war. And I think there are players who are opponents in Juba and they're proxily fighting using Olony and Simon Gatwich. That's what I'd like to say, of course, because this silence is really disturbing, as you said. And in the parliament, I know there's a constituency of the fighting forces in the parliament. Their MPs are not so much speaking. The only person I know speaking loudly and somehow is boldly is the chief whip of the parliament, that is Rebecca Joshua. She has been blaming people on the ground and blaming proxy war hands behind what is happening as a nonsense. So that's the only one. And I know there are people who come from that particular area of the fighting forces who are so vocal by then when they're in the government, but now they're completely silent. What does it mean? For me, silence means demonstrating an attitude that I cannot take responsibility. So I don't care about it. So what was happening. But it's a constitutional responsibility of the leadership in Juba to take a very quick, urgent responsibility to intervene on the issues of the situation in Sudan. And remember, if we're saying 2012 we're going to go for elections, if you say 2024, December 2024 we're going to go for elections, are these not voters? Are they really going to campaign that area? And they're going to campaign to that area. Will you not find a question, a very simple question to ask, like, when we are dying here, what were you doing? Why are you silent? Why there's no intervention from you? Why do you just keep on watching? I've seen the airlifting of the king of Chollo from his hometown of the kingdom to Juba is an intervention, good. But that's not the only person. Yes, the king is a high-profile person, but the massive death that are happening among the aged people, the elder people, the youth, the women, the children, the disabled people, what's happening there? I think that completely, for me, it shows a culture that there's a need to find a concrete solution from the central government to the situation that is going on in Upper Nile. As I described it, it's a Somalia in making, actually, in that part of Upper Nile. So there's a need for us to reduce this violence and making sure that we find a solution. That's what comes from Juba. So for me, the description of proxy war is the right direction, that it tells you what is happening, what is going on, and what's happening in that particular region. That, for me, what I see happening. So that's what I'll answer is the first part, the last part of your question. The beginning of your question that I'd like to answer is that Upper Nile is suffering with the concept, as you said, a semi-military, when the forces start fighting, is creating a chaos. That's what you have described in the situation in Upper Nile. But what I'd like to say in particular and categorical is that when you start using ethnicity as a ticket of controlling public office, of accessing public office, that is the consequences. Because 2013 struggle, we have been mobilizing on ethnic line. And we've been using ethnicity as a ticket. So when you start politicizing ethnicity and militarizing ethnicity, this is the consequence of what's happening now in Upper Nile. Because you start using ethnicity as an objective of waging a war against another ethnic group. So you start completely formalizing ethnic cleansing as a pathway of gaining either recognition, of gaining safety, of gaining security of your own ethnic identity. That is a problem. So we are really, the situation of Upper Nile, our cities and Upper Nile region, and specifically in what is going on now between the Chollo and the Nuer, is suffering from the attitudes of political leaders who are actually prematurely and who are completely ignorant, who are not properly informed by militarizing ethnicity, politicizing ethnicity. That is what is going on now. When you start politicizing ethnicity, we start militarizing ethnicity, these are consequences that we're seeing now. What's going to happen between the Chollo and the Nuer, what's going on in the upper region of Upper Nile. So for me, that is the really description of gun class, that it is completely mad gun class that believe on committing atrocities as a ladder to power. Today, let them sign an agreement. Let them come to Juba. What is the objective? Apart from those days when they're eating in the name of opposition. So they're really showing us a clear attitude that when they agree, they want to loot. And when they disagree, they want to kill. This is what our population is suffering now in Upper Nile. The Chollo in particular, and the Nuer even. And it's not only that Chollo are suffering. Yes, I know Chollo are under attack by the White Army. But also the White Army, we're losing our own brothers and sisters from Nuer in the name of the White Army, in the name of the forces of Simon Gatwage. Because bullets are not just going free. You're losing lives of others. So for me, it's a clear indiscipline, political indiscipline elites. And these are elites who are really not matured, who are premature in whatever they're doing. And these are elites who are gun class. These are elites who are primitive, using ethnicity as a ladder. And besides that, with all what they're doing, we have some our brothers who are educated, well educated in diaspora, are sponsoring in social media that particular classes. Some of them are praising what is going on. Honestly, if a human, how do you praise the killing of your own citizens? How do you take sides with one of these parties that are really committing atrocities? I don't feel that there's any genuine reason for any one of us who have gone to school, to a class, and claim I'm learned, I'm educated, will really support any either of these sides. What is the difference? They can't sit down and dialogue. And I know these are the consequences of NCP manipulations. NCP have manipulated a good number of population in our region of Upper Nile. And these are the consequences happening to our population. But the question is, if they want to fight, can they find themselves a space where they can go and fight without claiming the lives of innocent civilians? Because we're losing a huge number of civilians. As I said, 3,000 is a small number. To the best of my knowledge, to the best of my access to my sources on the ground, these 3,000 is nothing. People are more than that. And who are they? These are children who might have been the future of tomorrow. Who are they? These are our elders who might have struggled in another way around in keeping us who we are today. As we're speaking between me and you, by the time we're not born, but they are really safeguarding this country. They're safeguarding the land. They have not reached to this level. Who are they? These are people who with disabilities, who have nowhere to run with the condition they're in, but we force them to suffer. And now completely what is going on in Upper Nile, starvation is used as a weapon of war. People are forced to starve, to die in the waters. You know, and even they are forced to face this waterborne disease due to the floods. That some of them are dying of malaria, huge incidents of malaria happening. Besides the gun, we're losing lives because due to malaria, no treatment. We're losing lives because of waterborne diseases, and they have been forced to face that situation. It's completely inhuman. And whoever support what is going on in Upper Nile region, I'll say this is really a person who is a mad and who is a nationalist and who belong to this stubborn gun class that use atrocities as an objective of pursuing their personal interest, because I don't think there's any motive behind this. So this is my description of what happened Upper Nile. So I think, and another thing I want to make it very clear, the fighting force on the ground, Simon Gatwage and Johnson Oloin, and those who are sponsoring, they should not say the world is ignorant. The world is not ignorant. The world is documenting. The world is recording. They should say they're playing this game in hidden environment. Soon, some of them will face questions of accountability and justice. Some of them may be facing sanctions. Some of them may be facing indictment, and let them tomorrow cry that, this is the Western world doing things against us, or the global communities against us. It is your own action that you do that mobilize some of those consequences to face you, because we are member of UN. We are not an island of our own. And under UN Charter, there's a global responsibility to protect. As long as you don't protect civilians, you will face it. Let them remember what happened to LRA. Yes, you may say Kwanyi is not yet captured or is not being arrested, but where is he? Why is he always running in hiding? Why is he running in hiding? Why are the warlords that have been indicted? Why are they running in hiding? Why are they not living like any human being in normal life? Yes, you may be very far, you may not be caught up, but once you are leveled, you may find life is squeezed, and you will find the society becoming very small in your own homeland. You cannot move freely. So for me, that is what I would like to remind the fighting parties between what's going on in Upper Nile, between the Gatwich and then the Agwelek, that let them remember some of those leaders. And some of us who are also in social media who are promoting, let us remember that some of us, our own statements have been watched, have been documented. So we need to take national responsibility to protect the Cholo population from atrocities that are committed against them, which I think for me is an ethnic cleansing. But also we need to discipline those who mobilize the Nuer to go and fight the white army. So for me, both Johnson Olony and Simon Gatwich need to be stopped from doing that immediately. If at national level we fail, I urge the global mechanisms like the Human Rights Council in Geneva can use the South Sudan Commission, the UN Commission for Human Rights for South Sudan, or use the Office of the Special Envoy on Prevention of Genocide, because characteristics of genocide there, they should commission a quick facts-finding mission there, because UNMISS, who is a peacekeeping mission, which have a mandate to protect civilians, is limited because of too much bureaucracy. The only thing they end up is only issuing statements, but they need approvals, they need to be given green line to go and rush and establish what we call temporary protection based, what we call TOB, which I've engaged with it. We have established TOB in Tombra so urgently. We established TOB in around the Tonch so quickly. We failed to establish TOB in Nimulet between when the pastoralists and farmers are there. But I think the situation of Upper Nile require UNMISS to put a quick TOB and increase their patrol for protection of civilians. But why they're not doing that? Because approvals are not given to them timely. Those who are holding the power of approvals, why are they not giving a quick approval for protection of our own civilians? There, it means somehow they have interest behind the suffering of our people. So for me, that's really my answer, because I feel UNMISS could have quickly rushed, and they have all the mobility. They have all the instruments. They have choppers. They can easily fly, even rescue the last of those people who are in waters. But things of approval, you need to give them approval to fly around and to move around. So while approvals are being done in a bureaucratic way, and now we are losing the lives of our own innocent citizens. And some of us here, we claim we are nationalists. Believing on ethnicity by itself is a crime against the nation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Edmund Yakani, for that. It's a very unfortunate situation, and it is sad indeed that a country with a full mandate reached to this extent of not even protecting the life of 1,000 people. Is very unfortunate, and it is sad. The last question before we move to the next topic, Mr. Edmond, do you believe in your heart that the government of South Sudan, especially Juba regime, will be the best solution to bring these warring parties together? Or will it need them to go to Addis Ababa? It seems our government is not capable of addressing their own issues. They always write to Entebbe or Khartoum or Addis Ababa. Now we are taking troops to Congo. Will Museveni accept also to supply his troops to Congo and supply the rest to Upper Nile this time around? Thank you.
These two particular leaders, with due respect, General Simon Gatwich and General Johnson Olony, if you are to equate them to the power in Juba, I don't think you can reach consensus with the power in Juba. And remember, they have personal disputes against each other. For example, Gatwich cannot see themselves eye to eye with First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar. with His Excellency Vice President because of historical difference that they have. A former chief of staff and later on was dismissed. So if it comes to Juba, they can't see eye to eye. And Simon Gatwich was attempted by His Excellency President to be appointed as a peace advisor. Now imagine an attempt of peace advisor. Now he become a complete warlord that is waging war. So he left the job of the peace advisor. He jumped to the bush. So it means his relationship, also personal relationship with His Excellency President, is not okay. Who is Johnson Olony? Johnson Olony by then have a bitter relations with His Excellency President. That's why he joined the opposition. And later on, he again waged a war against the first vice president. So if I to bring the two leaders to Juba with the top leadership of His Excellency President and His Excellency first vice president, their reputation against the two leaders, both of them, is not soft. So it's not easy for both of them to convince the two. This requires a national heart and national spirit to really to address this particular issue. So I don't think that there's really a very well strategic position that Juba can bring a solution to the two warlords that are fighting in the bush. I describe the real warlords. I know some of their audience may issue statements. I know they may react that no, these are not, we are not warlords who are fighting for objective. But I'm not convinced that their war they're fighting having objective more than personal grievances against those access to power to control resources. I'm not convinced that they have a national political agenda, because for me, I believe the real gun class, whether being it the Kitiguang or the Gatwich or the Agwelek groups, all of them are just personal issues that they have waged it, they have leveled it, they have raised it to the level. Sounds like it's an objective, but there's no objective behind it completely. It's immature politics and immature arguments, and it's arguments of just ethnic cleansing attitudes that they're waging. So I don't think that there's really a strength of energy in Juba that can bring these two together. But the other thing that I want to bring is that Sudan is really not really playing a proxy war in Upper Nile region. And even this war that is going on between Simon Gatwich and Olony, is it not part of an economical war against South Sudan? From Sudan perspective? Because Sudan is playing a double standard. The regional agreement with Juba that we cannot cover rebels of another group, and these guys are getting the supply from Khartoum. What is going on with Sudan? And he's hosting meetings of these people. And now if a region like this, Sudan quickly will raise up and will start condemnation. And you have like there's individuals from Sudan who are based in Juba who actually sponsor the source of this particular crisis. It's for their benefit that let these guys continue fighting. Because Sudan have a prerogative. One, Sudan is no longer a Sudan that is neutral to the context in South Sudan in terms of violence. One, with Sudan, we share economical interests. They produce, the market is in Juba. Though I know in Sudan there's no leadership. But the same instability in South Sudan is instability in Sudan. And this is at the border with Sudan. So Sudan could have taken a big responsibility. At the same time, Sudan is a grantor to political establishment in South Sudan, or political transition. Maybe the word establishment is wrong. Political transition in South Sudan under the revitalized peace agreement. Sudan is a grantor to it. Sudan is supposed to have a say over this. Besides, Sudan is a chair of IGAT. And Sudan is a country ruled by a military leader. It's not ruled by a political leader. They can intervene quickly and discipline these guys and tell them, look here, we are neighbors. You can't do this to your own civilian population. So this is the problem that we've been seeing going on. And there's a quite number of political elites who are sponsors of either of these conflicting parties based in Khartoum. And it's things like normal, like we're losing over 3,000 lives of innocent people, like it's a normal business. So also, what is the role of Sudan in terms of proxy war in that particular situation? So I think we need to analyze and we need to seek solutions beyond Simon Gatwich and Olony fighting and beyond the center in Juba. So we need to look into other way. So it's not an undermining. So for me, this is another biggest thing, because it's almost like it's moving towards the oil fields and destroying the river transport, besides 4 freedoms that were signed between the two capitals, Juba and Khartoum. So I don't believe that Khartoum and Juba can offer a better solution for mitigating the tensions between this. One of the entity that I want to take this advantage of this particular platform to call upon them to react, and I don't know why they're silent also too, it's our Christian-based leaders, the faith-based leaders, the bishops. The bishops are silent. There's no attempt from the bishops. There's no any statement from the bishops. I've never seen any joint statement from the bishop about the situation in Upper Nile. What I've seen that individuals can make statements. But I think Christian-based leaders should make an attempt to really subside the violence by issuing statement or by even reaching out. I know there's attempts from our religious leaders to reach out to Simon Gatwich and to Olony for them to dialogue. But these are gun class people that they have too much spoilers around them that cannot allow them to speak to the religious leaders. I play a role in really creating an access of connection between the church and each of these leaders. But they have closed their mind. They don't like it. But also the religious leaders are quiet. And you can see 2 days ago, or even is it yesterday, the governor of Upper Nile is saying they don't have capability. We don't have the capacity to create any stability. That is the governor of the state, who is the chairperson of Security Committee, who is the top political leader of the state, expressing publicly that I don't have the capacity to create any stability there. I cannot discipline any either of these people. So it means they are well equipped, they are well armed. Who is equipping them? Who is arming them? So that's what I bring the proxy war. So I think we need a player. And unfortunately, that what is going on between Simon Gatwich and Johnson Oloin, you can't take it to IGAD. You can't take it to any capital. Cannot work. Unless if they are genuine and they feel they have an objective, they build alliances, then they go under Rome. Unless they want us to deal with Rome, then later on we come to them. Because, and you know, this tendency of signing agreements and the agreements are immediately failing, they are not honored, is building a culture of violence to be a normal practice. Because when the Khartoum Peace Agreement was signed, what's the delay? We need to do some bit of analysis. What's the interest behind Khartoum Peace Agreement? And why this agreement didn't mature? Was it an agreement signed to create the current situation that we're in? Was it a peace agreement, or is it an agreement for expanding a war? Because the interpretation, you can ask yourself, they signed an agreement in Khartoum. Very good people are making statements, jubilating, enjoying. You know, you said that if you see the gallery of the signing of the agreement, if you see those speeches, today have been done as atrocities against our own civilian population of the Chollo and then even of the Nuer. So, are this really an agreement for peace? Was it an agreement to design this murder, this massacre of the civilian population that is going on? So, for me, we need really a regional intervention. And I wish that Sudan would have taken responsibility under the chair of IGAD to intervene, and as a neighbor that will come from. And Sudan should know that this disability situation that is destabilizing that particular part of Upper Nile can easily be transferred to Sudan. They have the refugees in the next door of this particular violence. They can acquire arms, they can go back. They can go back and fight. And you see in the continent of Africa, when refugees are close to war zones, normally new revolutionaries merge out the refugees because they have access to guns of those wars. And even they can take side. You may have some Nubas, some Sudanese may take side. Even anybody, Darfurians who are refugees in Sudanese refugees camps may take side with these groups to access arms and bullets and to go back their home and wage another war. So you may see another new revolutionaries merging out of these classes in the border with Sudan, and they start going back to Sudan, that they're new movements. So for me, it requires a really quick intervention. And that's why I'm feeling if the national intervention is not working, global intervention to come in. And that's why sometimes I'm a bit disturbed with the way how UNMISS also exercises itself as a peacekeeping mission. Because Upper Nile is within the jurisdiction of UNMISS. It's not like ABA where it's MUNISFA and then UNMISS. UNMISS have a responsibility here. They should make a quick call. What we have seen is that we have seen the special representative for UN Secretary General, Hayson Fing, is only issuing a statement that we're disturbed, like the same statements of either civil society or statements of diplomatic missions. But they have the prerogative to quickly call Security Council for a special meeting on the situation in Upper Nile. The sort of Upper Nile really requires a Security Council meeting or AU, Peace and Security Council meeting quickly on that particular situation, because that situation is not normal. That situation is a situation of murdering, of massacre against civilians. And the world have said at different levels, whether at AU level or at UN level, never genocide of Rwanda again. Okay, we have said never again genocide, like what I've seen in Rwanda. But what's happening now in the Chollo land is clearly like the Rwanda one. It's only just there's no reporting, there's no publicity around it, as I said. And while can we say sorry? Can we say just we're silent because we feel there's no access there? No, we are not responsible at our various capacity. So it's a time for us to take responsibility to respond. And my appeal goes to the leadership in Juba. Still, they have the opportunity to bring solution to what is going on in Upper Nile as a leadership. If they really love the nation, if they love those citizens who are dying, they still have a responsibility. As a government, they can do that. But also at the regional level, at international level, we need an intervention quickly to the situation of Upper Nile. Statements cannot save lives from being killed. As we speak now, we are losing lives, either due to waterborne diseases or to malaria or to attacks that are going on the ground. So as we speak now, we're disputing, we're already losing lives there on the ground. So for me, it's really a moral responsibility that we need to take right now and stop the situation in Upper Nile. And for me, for your audience who are listening to us also, those of us who are in diaspora, if you contributed in fueling the violence, I'd like to tell you, time has come now from this particular talk. Lift and please distance yourself from fueling violence on the ground. We must really find a solution. It's a murder, it's a genocide, it's like any other incident in another part of the country, like what we have seen from other communities, because we're really losing. And then we become a laughing stock to the international community. Why do we struggle for independence? If anyway, that's the meaning of independence. Actually, many people will prefer to go for unity with the Jalaba if these consequences could have been describing that these are the consequences of voting for independence. But of course, for me, I don't regret for voting for the independent Republic of South Sudan. I just regret that the country is being taken by people who are immature, who have a lot of political indiscipline, people who does not care about the lives of others, care about their stomachs and their pockets only, and their family. They don't care about the nation. So we don't have people who are nationalistic running an authority under the constitution to make sure that actually this particular story in Upper Nile is quickly sorted out. We have been speaking some few days ago about Ngok and Twitch. We've been speaking about Tombra, Balanda, and Zande. We've been speaking about what is going on in some parts of Upper Nile. We've been speaking about tribes. So should we always, every year, for a certain particular period of time, we talk about ethnic classes? We've been talking about Denkabor and Madi in Nimule corridor. So for how long should we have shifting of ethnic classes from one group to another, and we say we have a really constitutional government in place? This is completely ridiculous. This is completely ridiculous, and this is completely political indiscipline, and this is the consequences of uninformed and irresponsible gun class consequences to our civil population. We didn't regret of having independence, but we feel that we need to see leaders who will take responsibility in preventing lives of civilians from being committed or being killed due to meaningless or to what we call senseless wars that are designed by the warlords who are within our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edmond Yakani. Indeed, it was yesterday when I was reading a certain book, and my good friend from Nigeria sent me a clip. And in that clip, he was interviewing one of the young guys from Nigeria in Abuja. And he asked the guy, if you has a chance of being reborn again, would you like to be born as Nigerian, or would you like to be born as a different nationalist? And the young man responded without fear of contradiction that for me to be born again as Nigerian, if I have that chance, then that will be an abomination and a big mistake for me. And then he asked him why. And then the guy said, Nigeria has no future for me. I don't see myself fitting in Nigeria. The reason why I stay in Nigeria is simply because I have no other option. And God is not even allowing me to be reborn again. So when you listen to that young man, it tells you that even South Sudan, if you ask them now, there are South Sudanese who will regret about having independence. There are those South Sudanese who will say, we rather remain as Sudan, or I rather change my nationality to be a DRC citizen, Somalia citizen, Central African Republic citizen, Chad citizen, rather than being citizen of South Sudan, because of the things that are happening. It was so painful that the national government is busy with its political parties formation, and the main opposition is busy claiming that he is still part of that party, and are busy sending troops, busy conducting numerous meetings and conferences, and people are perishing in Upper Nile region, and especially the Chiluk clan. It's very sad. To our viewers, thank you so much for maintaining your status and also watching us. I'm here to inform you that we had a bit technical issues before with the StreamYard, but it has already been rectified. by the technical team. So continue watching and continue sharing the live show. We still have more to discuss before we end the show, and we will make it quick so we don't need to keep you for long. Yeah, Mr. Edmund, after all that thing is done, said and done, or said actually, and it is not yet done, the war in Upper Nile, the conflict which is not even yet resolved of a net between Twitch and Ngok, it has just slowed down, but it has not yet been resolved. The issue of Tumbra, unity of Western Equatoria, the issue of Eastern Equatoria versus Jonglei citizens, especially the pastoralists, all these issues, the flood issue, the economic hyperinflation, the insecurity, every part of the country, and our government accepted to send some of the troops to Congo as peacekeepers. And they are doing it as part of their mandate as East Africa members. We need you to share your thoughts with South Sudanese on that. Is it actually appropriate for the government to send troops to Congo at this current time while there is a serious war in Unity State, in Upper Nile State rather? Is it appropriate for the government currently to send troops to Congo, yet their own relations with the Congo, with the Sudan in the border of Abyei is not yet clear? Is it appropriate for the government to send their troops to keep peace in somebody's house, yet in their own house there is no peace? Mr. Edmund, South Sudanese will be happy to hear your thoughts on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think these forces are not sent as a force to keep peace. These forces are sent as a force to impose peace, that actually even we fail to impose peace at our own home, because they are going to there to fight. They're going for combat. They're not going to like peacekeepers. They're going for combat. So why don't we combat our in-house ones before we go there? So that's one thing that I like to just make the fact. But let me come from an analytical point of view. You may get the other side of the story. Let me start from the other side of the story. Under UNIMIS, we have Bangladesh peacekeepers with us, while Bangladesh back home have its own crisis. But if you see, because I was arguing with some people say like, yes, there are countries who contribute to us UN peacekeeping missions, troops, while their own countries are not in peace, and they use Bangladesh as a contributing country for South Sudan as peacekeeping, because Bangladesh is having a problem of issues. Indians, we have them with us in South Sudan, and we have the issue of Kashmir between Bangladesh and Indians, which is claiming lives. So you may use that rationale to say, okay, because if that's how India and Bangladesh is, we also deserve to go, even if we have crisis at home, let's send the peacekeepers out there. But the main problem with sending troops, which for me, sending troops is not really the big deal. The big deal is the resources behind the troops to sustain them, and the economy that you have in your country to sustain these particular troops. And you had about 7 million who have been allocated from our national cap to sustain this force. That's real problematic. Should you send 7 million to sustain your troops outside? And specifically, if it's you, the contributing country, paying for it. Because my analysis was to see these troops, who is paying for them? Will they be paid by an external entity, like EAC? Will they pay for it? And of course, EAC budget is coming from where? From the member states. And the member state budget is not much than the budget coming from donors like EU, like other foreign governments which are funding them. EU cannot fund that in terms of financing. UN have lifted their hands. They can't put money into that particular mission. So we have to get from our own national budget. But we have civil servants who have not received salaries. We have striking now outside Juba, lecturers. So that is the part of the discussion around it. Yes, it may be a good gesture that you want to transform your army to start gaining skills that they may come back as a professional. But the rationale of your home, does it give you that clean track record that you can send? How does your nationals see you sending sons and daughters of the country to go there while home is is not clean. Like I said, like with the one, if you can use the one of the Bangladesh and the Indians that comes with that, besides of Kashmir. So for me, the biggest contradictions here is that at home, you can't impose peace, and you're going to impose peace in the neighborhood. And specifically, if you're going to impose peace in the neighborhood where it is you paying for it. And remember, in Juba, 2 days ago, with the clashes of army in town, in the city. Because of what? Simply because of access to income. So they're clashing within the city, and you're taking some shares. You want to take with some of them to go and impose peace in another capital. It's really contradictory. That's for me the contradiction. So for me, if I'm asked to advise, I'm not advise that don't hurry. Yes, we need to also show the global community that we are contributing to the global peace and security, but the timing is not appropriate for us. Let's put our house in an order, because if we put our house in an order, we can raise a call. This is one thing that I would like to bring to that particular analysis. So for me, appropriately, it's not timely, and it's not really something genuine for us to do that. That's one thing that I'd like to bring forward. Secondly, we're putting our fingers into this DRC business. I know it's not our will to go completely that. There's regional mobilization. So some of these diplomatic visits for building a trade and a business between two foreign governments, there's a hidden objective. That's what we call the action behind the curtains. Part of these visits of the DRC president, of Kenyan president, part of it is to push our human resource to be mobilized, to be added. Yes, we may not be in charge of commanding there, and be commanded by professional other countries, but we are asked to contribute human resource. So we're taking a human resource from our country to go and help other countries in building an identity of East African community, stabilizing peace in DRC, which we like it. That the more DRC is stable, also the more we will be stable, because the disturbance DRC may affect us. But the approach is what matters. And I don't know if Parliament deliberated on that. In a normal constitutional practices, our Parliament is supposed to make approval. They're supposed to table a bill. Like some of us who have been shouting around, oh, we need to see internationals coming to help us and undo the current government. No government will put their fingers into another government's affairs without a national approval. You need to have a law over that. So you need to enact a decision that is legislative. So some of those are the gaps that I like to bring to the attention to our audience in terms of that. Because if we couldn't, and that other thing also, if you're sending them as peacekeepers, our soldiers were going there, if it wasn't under the blue or under the cap of East African community, some people challenge them. Have they undergone human rights due diligence that they have not committed rape in country and then have been transferred to commit rape in other countries? You know that some of those values may come from a rational and professional argument when I deploy peacekeepers. How do you prove to the world that I'm sending a disciplined soldiers that will not commit atrocities? What about tomorrow if they commit atrocities? Is it registered against us? It destroys the future of us getting to this business of peacekeeping in long run if we don't take it professional and if we don't take it nicely. And what about if they end up with DRC? We hear there's a lot of gold. What about if they end up becoming miners and they start doing illegal mining, and then our armies be leveled that actually South Sudan could be troops that are ending up illegally mining? Because, you know, imposing peace, fighting in somebody's land, you're not supposed to violate some of the standards. Things like mining, illegal mining, and all this. So for me, that's it. Of course, I know they'll be under East African Command, but the payment of the budget and this 7 million, have the Parliament approved it? Have the Parliament dispute over it? Because I know His Excellency President, with respect, due respect, he told us during the Governors Forum that these forces are going to go. He contributed. Yes, in terms of demonstrating sense of commitment to global peace and security, it's a good move, but the approach is what really many people are disputing, and the timing, many people are disputing that. That why is it now? That's the question while we are explaining. And who is paying for it? Who is putting the dollar value? If the dollar value is coming from our national cake, it's really a complete contradiction, and it's a complete disaster that we have made as a decision. So for me, those are some of the things. And that's why we need more explanation of the leadership of the country about this particular. It's not only declaration. Explain to the nation what motivates you, how are you going to manage them, how are you going to handle them, what is the return to the country. Maybe we may see that there's another return to the country that will bail us building a professional army, as we're talking about that. But this public need information. The nation need to be informed. The nation need not to be kept ignorant. Because right now the nation is questioning, why are you sending them out? And we have more than 7 pockets of ethnic violence that you have mentioned. Tombra is one of them. In the Warap, the border of Twitch and Ngok Dinka, in Aneth, which is not a whole ABA. I can't level is an ABA war. It's a net war. That is the second one. You have Tonch as the third one. Now you have this Shuluk land, the fourth one. You have the issue of Nimule, the fifth one. So you have pockets of deadly ethnic community that you need to impose rule of law. You need to impose discipline before you think about your neighbor's house. So this is what I like to say. But also I hope that the decision of us contributing troops shouldn't be motivated by our neighbors who want to have access to DRC gold. Because we may be used to facilitate other people's access to DRC gold in the name of sending a stabilizing force, because it's not peacekeeping force. They call it stabilizing force. It means it's a combat force. So I hope that we will not find ourselves that we have been used to loot the resources. We have been used to facilitate some people's looting, not us looting actually. Some people will be looting the resource of DRC by using our human resource under the cover of that it's a regional move, while behind the curtains, they're looting the resources. So I hope that we should find ourselves in that business of where one day, one time evaluation will be done, that we have contributed a force that have facilitated some people who went and loot DRC Congo. So for me, I think also our government have responsibility to ensure that there's a proper monitoring and evaluation of the participation of our forces if they're to go. But anyway, I'm quite sure resources will not make it easy. Declaration is one thing, but physical deployment is another thing. So right now we're fighting over declaration. We have not seen yet physical deployment, because physical deployment, financial is costly. Keeping a stabilizing force, if keeping peace force, keeping peace mission, peacekeeping mission like UNMIS is disturbing the whole world in UN Security Council, which is a force that having no chance of combat, they cannot shoot a bullet. Now you're sending a force to shoot a bullet. Injuries, wounded. How are you going to manage? It is very expensive mission, by the way. Stabilizing force, it is costly. And economical, where are we to sustain these people? And look at the economy of East African community. The only stable economy, you may say, it is the economy of Kenya. Economy of Uganda is destabilized with what is happening in DRC. Economy of Rwanda is destabilized with what is happening in DRC. If you look at this Banyamulengi business that brought friction between capital Kampala and Kigali, it's a big one. So we only have maybe one stable economy that we can beat chess into it. Our economy, you can't count it to that economy with the situation we're undergoing. So it's expensive. It's something that if it to go rational and professional and scientific and doing analysis with a proper open-minded brain and avoiding committing yourself to something that will cause disaster or will cause you more harm, we could have made that decision in a hurry. We would have taken time to stabilize it. But anyway, leaders have made a decision on that. The next challenge that they have declared, physical deployment and resources behind these stabilizing forces is what matters. And I hope also we should not be hired to facilitate people who will go and loot the resources of DRC, because we got independence from the rest of Sudan because of behaviors of where our natural resources are looted, not for our benefit. And up to now, as we speak, our Minister of Petroleum have declared looting that has brought a chaos where he was denied not to attend a meeting because of declaring that our neighbor is looting our natural resources. So why should we go and facilitate some individuals to loot resources of DRC with the protection from our side? So for me, to some of the things that we need to again, and I hope that our parliamentarians should raise a motion over that and should deliberate that. But depend on also what type of parliamentarians do we have? Are there really people who are nationalists who can say, we can't allow that to happen? Let's stand up and let's question. We're not questioning the president, but we're seeing the practice of the government matters a lot. So as a government, they need to have answers and questions. What about tomorrow if we start reporting dead bodies? What will the family say? We start reporting people who have been brought back amputated from the crisis. What will the family say? What consent have been they given in that, yes, our sons can go? Because we've given a consent that it's a moral responsibility that we need to help the global peace and security agenda. And whatever the consequence is, we'll bear it because that's our contribution, historical, to be known that also we have contributed to regional. So these analyses are very critical with our tech with regard to the situation in DRC. So I wish that our lawmakers, our ministers, some of them are really people who are well educated. I wish they could have sit and deliberate and provide answers to this argument that we have been raising right now in this discussion. Time, context, resources, political implication, and procedures to make it as a clean deal. So we need to find answers to all these questions that have been raised. So for me, I think this is the big business that comes. But it's a shame that you go there and back home, you are reporting in less than 3 months, over 3,000 people are lost. So yeah, you may say the Bangladesh and the Indian could be case study, but at least what do you call the minimum standard of safety and security of citizens, both in Bangladesh and India, is secured. It's only Kashmir where they have what we call seasonal attacks or seasonal wars, but also the numbers are not really like ours. And theirs is that because media is covering, but ours is having worse and there's no media covering. If the media will cover, even DRC will ask, hey, you guys, you're coming to stabilize in our country. What happened? What is happening behind there? And if you're not careful, some of these soldiers may have their relatives behind there been butchered with these ethnic wars. And they're asked, you go and stabilize peace there. How do you stabilize peace there? And they're your relatives, your own citizens. So for me, these are some of the genuine arguments that we wish our leadership of the country should take time and find answers to it, because it's a high time that decisions need to be made with taking into consideration certain aspects of consequences that may happen, an image that also you may portray when I'm making such decisions. So for me, this is my call for that. But I feel my decision is that it's not timely and the approach is not appropriate for us to take that decision. Thank you. But
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Brother Edmund, for that. Indeed, timing is not right. Number two, the financial aspect is not well thought of, and it is not thoroughly discussed, and also allocate a certain budget for them. If East Africa community make a mistake of saying a member state will contribute to maintain their troops in Congo, then believe you me, our forces will return to Juba within less than 3 months. Up to now, East Africa community is we still owe East Africa community with a certain amount as the country.
Let me tell you, so, yes, you may say we have cleared our member subscription fees, but if you look at the operational budget of East African community, 60% are foreign funded. Is EU and Germans who are putting money there. It's not our governments of the region who put money there.
Imagine.
So now, and then the same people who are putting money there are telling you that no, we are not ready to finance stabilization because it's not clean. We don't know the motives behind it. So if they move that, the member states will just strand them. What will happen to these troops?
It's very unfortunate. Some of the things our parliament is supposed to be active on them, still they're silent. We thought our parliament will be silent only when it comes to the internal affairs between IO, IG, SOA, and all this. But I don't know what really happened to the parliament of South Sudan, the parliament of 600 MPs. I don't really know what is happening and what is going on. But once it comes to the allowances, the medical allowances, their voice are always vocals. And citizens always hear them saying that we need this for us to work and for us to serve our people. Mm-hmm. But after they pocketed their money, they still go muted. So it's really a big challenge to us. And the executive body, sometimes they're too much busy into their parties. I think the parliament should act as the elder to them in order to remind them on things that are supposed to be prioritized currently. But it's so sad. Although we have had, I hope you came across the clip, the warning sent to East Africa community countries by the rebel leader of Congo today. He warned them thoroughly, South Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, and Kenya, that if you involve yourself in the affairs of Congo, then you will regret. But you cannot come and impose peace for somebody who is certifying his interests, not the interests of the Congo, unless maybe you are doing the same thing in your own countries. You see, that was a challenge to all our leadership. And remember, Congo is also accusing Museveni for the last 4 years of taking their goals.
And remember, the crisis in Congo is not only regional economic interest. It's a global economic interest. It's a question of identity between English and French. Portuguese, Belgians are part of it. There are multinational companies that are benefiting with the instability in DRC. So now you're going to destroy their interest as a multinational interest without proper analysis. They may shift the game differently. Before you go and destabilize their business, they may say, no, look here, let's change the equation. So also, I think in Juba, there should be an analysis of what are the consequences of our contribution. What do we expect to be a return of those who we may be jeopardizing their interests by unstable Congo? So these are all things that we need to take them to account.
And remember, we still have issues with the Congo in the Bas area, the Bas between Ye and Morobo. The border issue is still now unresolved with the Congo. So it will be so delicate for the government of South Sudan if they just accept blindly without parliament taking it into their responsibility, debate it thoroughly, look at the implication, look at the disadvantages, and look at the advantages. And then they advise the national government accordingly. If not, then we are bringing shame upon ourselves. Yeah, Mr. Edmund, we have exhausted the topic of sending troops. You mentioned it very clearly. The exposure is good, that it will expose some of our soldiers, even if some of them don't even have a requisite skill of becoming a national army. By the virtue of being exposed to another country, they will start acting like they are peace lovers. By the time they will return to South Sudan, they will come back with a different perspective. That is one of the positive aspects of it. And it also tells the world, despite being a young nation, we can actively participate in things to do with global peace, security, which is a good thing. It can give us the credit. But the consequences need to be well thought of before we dive into such business. We will close this show, Mr. Edmund, before we yield it back to our viewers on the comment section. If you have questions, please, you pin it down there under comments, and the technical team will let us know for our guests to answer the question. All right, we have a question here from Bolneal. Sometimes I feel like South Sudanese don't know what they want in Junub. I joined the liberation struggle in 1986, and our war was to liberate Junubi, Kalam, Kulu. But now, what are these factions fighting for, really? So basically, I think Brother Ball came late, and you need to highlight him briefly with what you explained earlier, the genesis of fighting between Simon Gadwich and Johnson Oloin. And also we have another question here from Gadel Thorn, who has made them fight so-called human right, and then who divided Kidugwang party. I think those are the questions from Facebook, and I believe we still have more questions from Clubhouse, of which they will come later on after you answer this. You can activate your mic now. Edmond, you answer the 3 questions, and then we will go back to Clubhouse.
I will answer these 3 questions in one sentence. One is that, yes, we intend to liberate South Sudan from the rest of Sudan. But why are we fighting now? These are the consequences of people who are used by Sudan during the struggle for our independence. Now they have turned their orientation, that was the Bandel oriented for them to jeopardize the independence struggle. They have turned it against us. That's my answer that I'd like to say, is that actually the consequences that we're suffering from those people who have been mobilized by Sudan and oriented by Sudan to deny us independence. Now they have turned that orientation against us. And that's why they don't care about what the consequences are, because they're oriented. That murder, it's a ladder to power. So they believe on that. That's why this massacre is happening. And as an unfortunate ideology that has been filtered on us. And partly it's also a culture of where we like to politicize and militarize ethnicity. These are the consequences of what's happening. That's what I like to answer. Who call them human rights? Wallahi, my friend, whatever ethnic identity you want to protect, with the atrocities going there is a human rights violation. There's no way out. There's no way out that somebody can say, people are documenting. I want to tell everybody among your audience that they may, even these interviews of ours, people are collecting, they're documenting. One time will be used as evidence to qualify whether we're speaking true or facts, so or false, whether we're telling the right information or we're telling false information. So people are documenting what is happening on the ground. This incident is not happening in silence. Documentation is happening, is going on. One time people will see different things coming out of that consequences. So it's a really human rights violation that I'd like to say. And of course, the last question, who divides? Sponsors of proxy war divides the Kitigwa. It's $1. And when you have empty brain that believe on ethnicity without a national spirit, believing on their tribe, they define their tribe as a nation, and they feel they can impose a tribe on them. When you throw money into such a brain, what happened? These are the consequences. And unfortunately, one thing else I like to say, that sometimes this is a cause of eating something that belongs to the public in illegal way. You know, how much money was used for Khartoum Peace Agreement? Who are the beneficiaries? Where have they taken that money? Wasn't this money now been turned to take away lives of millions of citizens? And that's what I was asking. Was it an agreement or was it a plan to commit atrocities against our civilian population? That sometimes these local agreements are really having a very bad, dirty intentions. It doesn't have a good intentions. And that's why when you go for agreements that have bad intentions, the consequences are always like this. And this is always how things are not easy for people who want to play with public resources. Actually, we don't have military commanders that are blessing to the nation. They would have been blessing to take our boundaries away from our neighbors. But now they are military commanders that are cursed to the public population, to the civilian population. So we have a cursed military leaders. We don't have a blessing military leaders. Those are my answers.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Edmund, for that. I agree with you. There will come a time where South Sudanese will deny some of the documentaries that what I'm seeing did not happen during my lifetime in South Sudan. People are writing and people are documenting every step or every challenges in our country. Very soon, we, especially those who are currently in Juba, they don't even see what is happening in the other side of the country. But the time will come for this documentary to be released. Some of them will deny them. They will even say these documentations are forged from Congo, from Nigeria, from Somalia. But to be honest, atrocities are happening in our country. Only that we don't have media that can give us information. And things are happening. International communities fears for their lives. And they are now documenting them silently, waiting for election. After election, until we'll have a real democratic government without an agreement binding us, except constitution and people power, then those documentation will be released while it's watching. Thank you for that. I can yield it to Abraham Adit to allow some of our clubhouse members. Yes, I'm rightly informed that there is no question from clubhouse, but we can close with this last topic, Mr. Edmond. SPLM ruling party leadership structure. It was restructured, and the former, which they used to refer as the Secretary General, was dismissed. The first vice president, and that did not sit well with the first vice president. He responded quickly, saying that I'm still a member of SPLM. SPLM has no honor, and nobody can disown anybody from SPLM. Kindly, Edmund, can you tell us, because you're on the ground, we have seen IO leadership conducting rallies in Lagos State, in Western Equatoria, in Jonglei State, and in Central Equatorial State, which is Juba. Were they doing all this and still that they believe they are part of SPLM? And if that is the case, what was in the agreement? Because you cannot campaign on this hand, and if that person said you are no longer with me, let me campaign alone, then you start saying, no, I'm part of you. Seriously, citizens are confused. Could this be another genesis of crisis of 2024 election? Or will this take them back again to Addis Ababa or to Arusha for Arusha declaration? Also to use another public funds to convince who is not member of SPLM. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I've been following this development closely, thoroughly, and watching it out. It's a good drama, actually. It's a drama that has confirmed to me some of the words that was spoken in Baghdad by the Kenyan renowned professor, Patrick Lumumba, about our leaders. And was saying, as that you guys, you don't have leaders. You have well-educated people with empty brain, with selfish. And you remember this video is trading around Lumumba talking about South Sudan in terms of describing our leaders, who they are. And I think Lumumba's prediction has come to reality with this game that we have seen going on now. And I wish that your audience would go back to Lumumba's on trading video, though I know it's short, but there's a full clip of when he was in Baghdad, where he was kicked out actually by the current leaders for him not to be among the experts that help us, because for him is straightforward, direct, and attacking personalities of attitudes of leaders in terms of making South Sudan as a stable country. Before we go to in-depth, let me give facts here. First, there's a clear indicator in the restructuring of the SPLM, which is going on now, that Arusha process is dead. We should consider Arusha process is dead. The argument around the factions of SPLM could have a genuine ground if Arusha agreement is functional. What are the indicators Arusha agreement is dead? There's a clear indicator Arusha agreement is dead. One, the factions that were struggling. And I remember one of, I don't recall a person here, one of our political elites have one day spoken in an event in Freedom Hall before me during the signing of the roadmap that the unity of the SPLM is the stability of the country. If the factions unite, the country will be stable. But one thing that he failed to take to account is that the personal greedy among the SPLM members who are political and disciplined will never keep the country stable. That's one thing that they forget, that actually SPLM is a party full of indisciplined individuals who does not respect their manifestos, their party. You know, party is like an entity. Whether you like it, you don't like it, the way how it's structured, its internal principles discipline you. If it is blue, it's red, it's whatever, it's up to you. But since you accept it, you either get out of it or not. So, Arusha agreement is dead. Now, rationally, if in terms of rationale, in terms of logics, in terms of analysis, in terms of context, frameworks, if Arusha agreement is dead, what else want to unify the factions? I think each faction have to fix themselves. And why each faction have to fix itself? Because under the agreement, the Political Parties Act is already amended and it's taken to the parliament to give legitimacy to whoever feel you can come, 2, 3 of you want to register, you register per the eligibility enshrined in the what? In the Political Parties Act. So that's some of the facts that I want to bring forward. Now, what are the indicators Arusha is dead? One, if you see in the restructuring, the members of Upper Nile have taken into account members of the other factions of SPLM. Her Excellency Vice President Mama Rebecca is member of the restructured SPLM. If those names goes on well. Tabandeng is part of that restructured SPLM from Upper Nile. Kosti Manibe is already part of the restructured SPLM in the part of Equatorial Belt. So those individuals that come from the other factions, they have accepted the restructuring and they have gone back. Even were brought in NCP. You have seen very clear NCP and also in SPLM uniform. They have incorporated them. Yeah, we incorporated them already there. So what do you do now? What argument do you want to do here? The argument is that politically, let us be genuine and honest. That the party structures have dismissed its members and its internal mechanism have approved the dismissal and the chair of the party have endorsed. What argument do you want to do anymore? Since you're absent that structuring. There's no argument. The argument is that take a new pathway. And actually for me, politically is advisable for His Excellency Vice President to take a new pathway. I do this argument around regional isolation when it become independent. Are we not regional going to be isolated because this concept of ruling party cannot be overthrown in all these arguments are there. There are resources that we need to share. These resources, this party can run away with it. There's those arguments, they're there. But those arguments does not make you to stand with two legs. You must stand with one leg in one side. So I think for me, if I'm asked to be an advisor to His Excellency First Vice President, I will tell him, don't deny your members who have massively agreed to take a color and a stand to challenge the sitting party, because politics is a genuine and non-violent way of challenging authority. So it's up to them now to decide to establish. As they said, they have already launched a color. They have launched a logo. First, you have indicators that shows you are already completely separate. You have your own logo. And logo in political science is very important. That's what identifies you from the others. You already have a color that identifies you differently from the others. You already have a slogans that identify you differently from the others. You have already established your own structures, governance structures that are contrary to the other parties. You have your own political bureau, you have your own members of structures. And now you say, these structures of mine must be swallowed by that unorganized structure. And they're organizing themselves. No, they say, don't organize yourself minus me. And I've organized my structures. This is really contradictory in terms of political science. So for me, it's a humble advice to Excellency Vice President to take a pathway and say bye-bye to the red color and take his blue color and move with it, with its slogan, with its all. And they have manifesto. They have a constitution which talk differently contrary to what they're saying they belong to. So for me, those are some of the arguments that we need to really come forward. In the school, in the society of learning, it's really challenging. In the society of learning, it's really challenging intellectually. When you portray that in front of intellectuals, people shake their head like, are things really normal or things are abnormal? And I'm not saying you may say things are abnormal from an academic and a professional point of view, because science never agree here. Arguments, a scientific and educative argument here does not match with the arguments that are going on. So for me, it's a complete disorder. They need to take up a question of really standing into their point of like, look here, time has come, let's take a different stand. After all, we're going to go for elections. Election will decide who will be. If elections are not to be manipulated, that's one thing. But of course, also the question goes back to SPLM. As they're enjoying the privilege of the political space they are organizing themselves, they should avail that particular privilege to other political parties to take the same. Let them not interfere. If others also want to structure ourselves like the way how SPLM structure itself, don't control them that you need to seek approval because we are government. And don't deny them not to portray their colors in the national TV, in the national instruments, the way you're doing it. That would be the challenge to the SPLM, that if really they are part that they believe on democracy, they have to allow others to use the state institutions, the space with that. And because they have not seek approvals, that I think that has been to be controlled. They might have been enjoying it freely. So they should allow also others not to have approvals and to continue structuring themselves. And that is how what is called a public consensus for governing a state and building a nation is always achieved. So that's there. So for me, for Dayo, it's really contradictory that when they start saying, no, we are not part of it, we are still there. You could have been there, part of it, if Arusha agreement is functional. Arusha agreement is already dead. Those who by then are part and parcel of the functions of Arusha agreement that signed, they're now part of the red color. So what do you do? The simple answer is that it's not really, it's not fitting, and it's not matching, and it's not fixing itself from here in the brain here. That's not completely, it does not help. It shows somebody like, what is it exactly? What are you after? If you're after justifying that I'm alternative and I have a better way, go your way, go to the ballot boxes. The only call we are making to the SPLM is that you have enjoyed privilege of restructuring yourself. And I know some of the audience in this particular platform are SPLM diehard. And because I know some of them, when they send, they say, I'm a diehard. So if you're a diehard, the same way you enjoy the spirit of being diehard, give that space for others also to enjoy it. And good enough that there's a 6 governors forum resolutions. Resolution number 14 have called leaders to tolerate what they call constructive criticism, open political space, respect of freedom of expression and opinion. So now SPLM must make sure that they are sitting in the seat of the presidency. the resolutions of the governance forum, resolution number 14, they should exercise maximally. They should allow, if they don't organize themselves, let them organize themselves, let them use all the space, let them enjoy like the same way, let them print their colors without any restriction. If they want to fly with it everywhere, allow other parties to enjoy the same space. And I think that somehow may act as a reconciliation, political reconciliation among the political elites. They will say, now, okay, we have reconciled politically. Now let's wait for the last kick. The last kick is a vote of the citizen. Let's sit and decide among us who is clean and who deserves to run the state. So for me, that's the transformation that we need if we can have a mature politics from SPLM versus IO, from IO versus SPLM, and from SPLM versus other political parties versus SPLM versus IO. So for me, that's maturity we need to see. But this argument that is going on now in the social media and different platforms is not fitting here completely. There's no rationale, there's no science, there's no theory.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Etimon. The last question is the one being displayed on the screen by Kenyi. That what could be the impact of the war in Upper Nile State to the rest of the 9 states of South Sudan? And what role should the rest of the states play in bringing peace to Upper Nile State? Thank you so much, Brother Kenyi. That question is very legitimate. And then we have another question here from Dikir. What are the roles of unified forces in regard to the escalations of violence in Chuluk from tribal militia? Thank you so much, Mayik and Brother Kenyi. Your two questions are very legitimate and valid. This will be the last two questions to be answered by our guest because time is not on our side. And if time allowed us, maybe before the end of the week or even next week, we can still have another show to continue talking, because the more we talk and spread the information, the more our leaders pay attention to us and they act on it. Now they pretend like citizens are not seeing what is happening in Upper Nile, and that is why they are silent. And if all citizens go to their Facebook now, like 200,000 South Sudanese people, to post anything related to the war in Upper Nile, believe me, before next week, our national government will intervene and they can respond quickly. But now our citizens are silent. They pretend also that nothing is going on. Mr. Edmund, time is yours to summarize those two questions. And thereafter, you will give your last parting shot before we end our show. Thank you, Edmund.
You know, with the first question of Kenyi, I would like to tell Kenyi that we have reached to the level now that as a nationalist, we are no longer standing for the nation. We're standing for the constituency that you belong to, because there's a new political culture which is building up among South Sudanese that Juba plus my village, as long as they're peaceful and stable, South Sudan is peaceful and stable. I don't care about what happened to others in other location. And that's why even you see, because I rush quickly to pick the governance forum's resolution. I wish resolution number 1 under peace and security could have been the situation of these tribal wars. But they just called, we need to find the mitigation of a solution to the intercommunal violence, taken lightly in the governance forum's resolutions. And these are all the 10 governors and the 3 administrative areas they are here. So this tells you very clear that the interest of others in helping the situation in Upper Nile is completely weak. Because what could have been the best way forward if we're nationalists, our governors would have all take a stand and go to Upper Nile, or even storm the national government and say, look here, we need to stop that thing. Because it's the same scenario happened in Tombora, nobody cares about it. The same scenario happened in Magui, nobody cares about it. So it's becoming pockets of tribal violence is created from one area to another to pre-consume our attention. For me, I feel it looks like a strategy of somebody who just want to shift ethnic violence from one particular state to another so that we're pre-consumed with that. Some few days back, I've been shouting, Tonch North, Tonch is, whoa, you know, we keep quiet. Again, now, Ngog, Denka, Twitch, now we're done. Mogale, Mahdi, Denkapor, we're done. Now we're going to Suluk, Nuer, soon. As they come down, they open another window of opportunity somewhere that draw our attention. Murle and Denkapor in terms of Murle and Nuer. So, you know, we've been preoccupied by these pockets of violence. Simply why? Because people does not have a national stand on how to handle it. So I don't think that this particular issue is really taken serious by other 90 states, because the governance forum is so weak on that. And 2, we have not seen other governors taking responsibility, even humanitarian aid assistance. You would have seen from humanitarian aid. that other states are really caring about what happening in Upper Nile. They would have said, each government would have said, I mobilize this amount of money or this food I want to send to my brothers and sisters who are suffering because of intercommunal violence in Upper Nile or due to the floods. We don't see that happening among our governors. And some of them are well off. They're well off actually from the personal money they can pick. We know their businesses, whether within the country or outside the country. They have access to income they can contribute and send signal of solidarity to their own fellow nationalists. So the spirit of a nation is no longer there. We're no longer nationalists and we're not standing for the nation. That's one thing to say. Of course, the consequence is that each state should be ready. When time comes to your ethnic violence, you handle it. Lobong, we've been shouting some few months, if you remember, we've been shouting on Lobong. Lobong's been now having experience. We've been fighting over Aleu. Aleu is out now. Warab is okay. We've been shouting about Abiy administrative area. Now he's down. Now he's the governor of Upper Nile, been exposed. He's done now. Maybe we don't know from him now where they're taking. Some few months back, we were over Tombra, over Futio. We've been over Governor Futio. So there's already a culture of creating pockets of this violence. So it's really taking lives of our innocent civilians, while the leaders are very far from feeling the pain of this. These are these unfortunate situations that is not touching our political leadership directly to the level that they can take really standpoint, because we would have minimized these things. This particular violence does need an external. That's my response to Kenyi. My response of what motivates or what escalates this particular violence is simply greediness of power and control of resources. These warlords have nothing for power and resources. Simply ask what is Olony and Gatwich doing. After being offered positions, after offered ranks, what else do they want? And the resources they control what are there. The only thing that we are now thinking is how much of the immediate family members are suffering in this crisis. And how many of the immediate families are protecting them, even using sons and daughters of other people to protect them, and they undercover heavy protection while they send sons and daughters of others to ferry in the front line, whom their parents are unable to be generals and unable to be brigadier generals and unable to be used for proxy war. So we are suffering from proxy war. So my concluding remarks, I would like to say, South Sudanese, the same attitudes we use for the dredging.
Yeah, before that, Edmund, you need also to let us know, are there some signals about the recent unified forces being graduated everywhere, like being assigned to maintain peace in that state, or they were just graduated and then dispatched to their houses? Thank you.
There are signals with regard to the Twitch and the Ngok Dinka, they have been used there. But whether it's under the principle of unified, because remember here, I know one of the person asked, actually have reminded me, one of the last audience asked, what is going on with the unified forces? The unified forces processes for them to take responsibility of playing a role in providing individual and community safety and security is not yet completed. Why? They're graduated, the high command structure is unified. Remember this one thing. Now these graduated forces, there's two exercises need to be done for them to be redeployed. One, we need to right-size ranks. And if you remember, some few days they have been fighting that some of the parties have brought their ranks all as generals. So those ranks need to be unified. If you don't right-size those ranks and don't unify those ranks, still redeployment is going to be a problem. Unification in terms of redeployment is going to be a problem. That's one thing. So what we do is that I've seen signal of where the normal boots, the private officers who have been assigned, for example, like in the case of Aneth, they have been deployed there. But the process of they being redeployed professionally, but the standards of the agreement is not yet finished. So even some of them deserted that out, to the best of my knowledge that I'm aware, they don't have food to eat, they have left. So they need to come back when we're going to do right sizing of the ranks. So now after right sizing, and remember too, as there's argument, how do you deploy them? The people who graduate from Equatoria, you deploy them to Equatoria, will they not pay allegiance back to their ethnic and their party loyalty, or should you mix them up? You bring part from Upper Nile, part from Paragazal, part from Equatoria, you put them as a one entity, and then you deploy them somewhere. So they become a mixed. And even priority of redeployment are not yet defined. So the redeployment of the unified forces that are graduated are not going to be easy. And I don't consider that they are well prepared to take tasks of providing safety and security. And that's why you see these guys are enjoying the clashes. Because otherwise, if they could have undergone the process, they could have been the immediate force sent there and they don't consider anybody. They see them all as opponent of the civilian protection. So that is a challenge with the graduated unified forces, that the necessary steps for redeployment of the unified forces and even for unification to take place, unification is still incomplete. It's not complete. Graduation is not a complete unification. Graduation is a step within the process of unification. So after you graduate them, you need to right-size the rank. After you right-size the rank, you need to do delegation of responsibilities in terms of command structures after the central command has been done. So those steps are not yet been done. So it's not easy to really to have them as a one single force that you can deploy them. And remember also, what are they graduated with? Sticks. So can the sticks go and tell Online and Gatuj that be disciplined? And even start asking yourself, why sticks? Because if we follow the agreement, we're supposed to deal with the actual soldiers who have rivals in hand, who are physically engaged. We're supposed to unify them. Where are their tools that they're using during the days of the war? Where have they been hidden? Why do you have sticks at hand? Or these are new civilians, new recruits. And then sometimes you argue that actually these are new recruits. We're not graduating the actual soldiers, because the agreement was not referred to new recruits. The agreement was referred for those are physically engaged and exercising tools are the ones supposed to be unified. But where are their rivals? So these are all things that it have a big deep into the unification of the forces that I like to bring to the attention of the audience. So for me, I hope that I've answered the last person. So sorry, I almost leaving this question unanswered, but a good idea have reminded me, I've provided an answer with regard to the unified forces. It's not yet easy for them to be really deployed to handle such situations. And as you know, that sticks were being used for graduating them, and I'm quite sure they are not even having enough equipments to go and face such, because you want to face that situation of Upper Nile, you need a well-equipped and robust force that goes and discipline them all. Either they surrender or they're all cleared. And who are they dealing with? They're dealing with children of innocent people who have no livelihood. You know, these two warlords have turned the barrel of the gun as a sort of livelihood for that population. And that's why people are rallying behind them, because at least with it, I can earn something, or I can gain something to eat, or I can provide something to my families. And families surrender their children because of ethnic cleansing. They want to protect ethnicity, which is not real if you have to come to Juba. That's not an argument. So for me, that is it. I don't know whether you can allow me to conclude or still there's other things.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Edmund. You can give your last parting shot, your last message to South Sudanese and also to our national government in regard to the topic that we discussed. Thank you.
My message to our national government that a quick intervention is needed in Upper Nile. It's really, 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 we need to deter this quick. And my message to the leaders of the fighting forces in Upper Nile, and in particular, Simon Gatwich and Johnson Olong, if they're nationalists, if they believe in the nation, and if they don't believe that they want to lose lives of innocent citizens, let them cease fire immediately. And Juba need to intervene immediately there. And also Juba is not only the political leaders. Our religious leaders need to intervene. Their silence is disturbing us. The faith-based leaders need to intervene in this particular situation on what's going on in Upper Nile, because it's not normal, it's abnormal. And to every South Sudanese, wherever you are, if you take side with any one of the conflicting parties in Upper Nile, I don't say distant yourself, become a peace ambassador for driving that. And for the whole South Sudanese, the same energy we use for preventing the dredging of our rivers, can we use the same energy to bring a solution to our sons and daughters of Chollo Kingdom and the Nuer who have been used as a white army? So for me, the appeal goes back now to the nation. It's a high time for us to stand up for the safety and for the security of our own sisters and daughters in Sholok land and within the Nuer. And remember, when the fighting is going on there, it doesn't know any ethnic. But the people who mobilize and to fight, they're using ethnicity. So let us stand up as a nationalist for the nation by making a campaign for peace for Sholok land. The king have left. I'm a bit worried. The civilians may be suffering more. The president of the king could have provided a bit of protection. His absence there is a big issue. And the two warlords are not convinced that dialogue is the best way. But we still urge them, let them come to the table of dialogue to save the remaining lives of our own brothers and sisters in that region. Thank you very much, and thanks to your audience for following this particular deliberations.
Thank you so much, Brother Edmund Yakani. First of all, permit me on behalf of Lagos State Media to appreciate you for your timing always. It's hard for you to give up or to turn down the request. You always find time and create time despite the challenges in our country, as all of us are aware. You always sacrifice everything that you have for the quest of prosper and better South Sudan. We ask you keep it up. Time will come for citizens to appreciate those who always share their concern with their fellow countrymen and women. To our viewers, thank you so much for always tuning in and listen also and throw in your question. Remember, we always bring guests for you to question them. Although we always have some questions to ask them, it is your mandate and your right as a citizen of South Sudan to pose your question to them in a respectful manner, as you always do. Thank you for that and for maintaining that. We will be keeping up, bringing some of the guests and even parliamentarians, if we find time, to come and tell us what are they doing in the parliament, and you'll still be having chance to question them. To the team of Lagos State Media, technical team, currently by Abraham Adit, who is actually trying to control the show and make it as the way it is. Thank you so much, Abraham Adit, for that dedication and commitment always. To the president of Lagos State Media, Isaac Tiangpol, thank you so much for your dedication and for your time. And to Deputy President Bolma Kurachen, and to the Minister of Information, Gardeng Mobok. It's through your collective effort. That's why Lagos State Media always have guests to come and talk to us. Keep it up. Information is power. And through us, we can provide information to our citizens. May God bless each and every one of you. May God bless South Sudan. And may God bless Africa. Thank you.
It's your boy Young Love, I give him that time. Pancho Legistan, Panchi America, Panji Dwal, Pancho Legistan, Panchi America, Panji Dwal, Ban walk on the lake, Kankara, what on the watching, Oga, leg, gear, bow, very leg, Panda with Yay, Panchi America, Panya Dwalabano, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Paku Panda Jiro, what they are be Dwalaventing. Stand Panchi America, Panji Dwal, Pancha Leg Stand Panchi America, Panji Dwal, Ban walk on the lake, Kankara, what on the watching, Oga, leg, gear, bow, very leg, Panda with Yay, Panchi America, Panya Dwalabano, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Paku Panda Jiro, what they are be Dwalaventing.